Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm at Apex 2020 and I'm joined by Akhil from Omnics. Akhil, we've talked at length in the past, but what's happening at the moment in terms of supply chain disruption is really highlighting the need to have visibility in your supply chain, have some degree of agility, but yet still have something that's robust and viable and financially sensible. This is what you've been preaching for some time. Are you hearing from people that are asking for that, or are they busy firefighting and then afterwards they'll think about that? What's the fallout from what we're seeing in China at the moment?
I think it's a mixed bag. There has been a maturity in terms of how companies are managing the supply chain, not just in terms of the planning, but also the execution. But where we stand today is that uncertainty is a new normal. That is what it is. Nobody can predict when the next virus is going to come on, where it's going to come from, earthquake or tsunami, we don't know. What we know is it's not about predicting the future, but knowing what we should know right now so that we can take meaningful actions. So there is the planning aspect of it and there's an execution aspect of it. So I think companies are struggling in terms of, yes, there has been a progress in terms of the resiliency of the supply chains and having certain buffers here and there to mitigate these risks. But at the end of the day, still there is a lack in terms of forward-looking planning when it comes to a supply chain. For example, I mean, we all know that we cannot predict what's going to happen, but we all know that companies have buffer stocks at different locations to manage these kind of events. But how quickly you can get that data and how rapidly you can make the decisions of where to move that buffer stock quickly so that you don't have any disruptions in your customer service levels or product availability and so on. I think that's where companies are still lacking the tools and the means to do those analysis rapidly.
Yeah, and you used the word resilience, which I think is really important. One of the categories at CES this year, and it's I think the first time I've heard it, is resilient technologies that although you can't plan for these things, actually give us a degree of preparedness for them. And we've gone from Chinese New Year, which was a predictable disruption, to unpredictable disruption. How have those that do have that data available to them fared compared to those that have not? I know you have customers that have much greater visibility into their supply chains.
I think the general kind of the storyline is what we are observing in the market is that companies who have set up the processes and certain tools to do their planning and the execution, I think they're faring much better, of course, because the companies relative to companies who are still on spreadsheets planning, right? I think we are still looking at about almost 80% or more than 80% planning done on spreadsheets. And most of them are error prone and it's manual, right? So think about it where an event or something like this occurs and you have to respond in minutes or maybe less than a day versus what companies are taking is days and weeks to get to an answer of what they should do. So I think that's where the line is in terms of how companies are faring, who have the processes and the organizational structure to manage these and the tools, most importantly, to rapidly understand what the impact is going to be. I think they're faring much better versus the ones who are still on the spreadsheets approach. Yeah,
and it's having real-time data and having the ability to protect the user from complexity, so being able to recognize what you can act on and what you can't. Once we get past this situation, everybody's firefighting, everybody's doing what they can to fix things at the moment. Do you think there's a point where they start to do a bit of supply chain redesign and rethink some processes and maybe model what should have happened, what could happen in a future crisis?
I think again the situation is such that the next change or a disruption could be a tweet away. We don't know, right? So what we are observing is that companies are now in that phase where, yes, the planning, I still remember maybe 7-8 years ago, the whole network design planning was an exercise that was typically undertaken once every 2-3 years, not even that frequently. Now it's more frequent. I mean, it's not just a question about China, but also looking at other locations based on the tariffs and duties and trade wars, what's happening. But now what's coming next? Could there be another wave of tariffs and duties that may again shift the supply chains, right? Of course, the structural changes of the supply chain cannot be changed every single year. However, what we are seeing is that companies are a lot more proactive in understanding and running certain what-if simulations to understand the impact on the business and making the decisions proactively using data, most importantly.
Yeah, and it's creating that agility, that ability to move quickly in the supply chain and have real-time data to make those decisions. That's hugely important at the moment. Are you seeing much use of AI in there to assist decisions, or is it really just about having the data so you can sit down as a team and manage the process?
I think good question there on AI. Here is what we are observing and also what we are actually working towards at Omnics. AI is definitely going to be more of a mainstream approach in terms of going forward. We are not there yet, to be honest. The way I would put it is that before you replace a human with a robot or AI, you need to take a lot of robot out of a human. There are so many activities in daily planning and execution of the supply chains that are so robotic. And what we are actually deploying is robotic process automation at Omnics. So where 80% of this work, everything from data retrieval, cleansing, some of the basic analysis, that should be automated, and that can be automated. So I think that's the first step, to be honest, in terms of moving towards true AI. Definitely down the road we will be there, but right now I think first stage, yes. We have to cross that before jumping to step 10. We have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4. So
Baby steps, but it's fascinating. I think what you're doing is what you're doing with Omnics and the platform that you provide is helping customers in this crisis, and it should be encouraging to those that are still on spreadsheets that once they get through this situation realize that change is inevitable, and now's the right time. And as you say, supply chain disruption is a fact to life. It's not something that happens once and never happens again. Akhil, thanks for stopping by. I know we've got a panel discussion later today, and I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, have a great show. Thank you.
Thank you so much.